Welcome to the Grit Growth Podcast with hosts Carson Stefanelli and Matt Webster. Our mission is to build grit in people. Our vision is to restore American grit to its former glory. Here, you will find inspirational interviews of strife, spirit, ultra accountability, and ultimate triumph, all in the form of casual conversations. You can join the Grit Growth movement to build an unprecedented force of conquerors both in business and in life at www.gritgrowth.org. Commit to conquer, lead your life, leave a legacy, gather your grit, and let's get after it.
Please meeting.
Welcome.
Thank you, Carson.
Thanks for joining me. I've been thinking about this for a long time and really looking forward to it. I'm so glad we're finally hitting record on one of these conversations that we always have and mean to record and never do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's you're probably more recently with the lunches, but I mean, yeah, we go back quite a few years having some in-depth conversations, you know, and personal and then life and work and how does it all transpire. And it's interesting to be sitting here with you and kind of going down a new path and kind of recording it and dissecting it and learning from it.
Yeah, it's interesting to think from humble beginnings of what we used to do and now this. I mean, it's, you know, totally different and yet somehow related too. So it's really cool, and I'm glad to be taking the next step along the journey together for sure.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, so the purpose, you know, of course, here is to dig deep into your grit and what makes you, you know, being an exemplar and a paradigm of grit, what makes you tick and what keeps you going. So with that being said, you know, maybe first we should start with a little history, a little background, and see where that leads us.
Sure. You know, kind of started, I mean, I was an Army brat, so it's one of those things that you moved around a lot and you ended up in a lot of different cultures, both, you know, even internal to the U.S., you know, culturally, but even external and traveling internationally and just picking up and going. And, you know, you kind of didn't realize it as a kid. It was just kind of a fact of life. That's what you did, you know? And so I think it's one of those things where you were facing adversity without knowing it, you know, growing up, you know, with that kind of change. And so, you know, what I know about change now and kind of the stresses of change and what are the most, you know, more stressful moments in your life and kind of new careers, moving, you know, being one of those. So just being brought up with it, you know, that kind of change, diversity, always on the go. I came down here to the University of Florida because we were Florida residents, my dad being in the military, but I went to high school in Northern Virginia. So really kind of leaving that world behind and starting a new one at UF, and figured I was going to do 20 years in the Army. I was an Army ROTC scholarship recipient and kind of what I knew. And that's what I figured I'd be doing. And that kind of worked out through the University of Florida. I got my construction degree, but, you know, also planned on being Corps of Engineers with the Army. And sure enough, that's the branch I got and kind of started that path. And, you know, where the Army took me is where the Army needed me. Which is combat engineering, you know. So I ended up, in lieu of building, I ended up blowing things up, you know, and which was a lot of fun, you know, an experience you can't have every day. And I look back on that experiences in Korea and you know, Kuwait and deployments, and you know, my wife and I were just in Savannah, and you know, we had to run down to the courthouse, you know, and get married because of deployment orders, you know, because the Army doesn't care about spouse or fiancés. So all of a sudden you're planning your wedding and that gets interrupted and you're at the courthouse with some crazy judge that looked like Einstein, you know, marrying you in his quarter, you know, in his little quarters there, you know, and you're like, okay, cool. I'm leaving tomorrow. And you're gone for 5 months. And, so again, you kind of just roll with it. That was just part of the scenario. And after 4 years of that, really that deployment, for me said, okay, I want to have a family, and it was that resolve of the Army career isn't really what I want, even though it's what I had thought about my whole life. But what's best now, with this marriage, with my wife, and she didn't sign up for the Army life, and kind of respecting that, and the fact that I wanted to build versus, be a combat engineer. So I ended up back in Gainesville where her family's at, and 22 years at Charles Perry Construction to CPPI Construction Management. And one of the things when I started, I had a job and trying to learn the career, learn construction, relearn it. I had all these Army acronyms and really had forgotten anything from school, and had to kind of relearn that, but no real practical experience in the construction industry, after, college. And so that was kind of interesting. That first year, there were, I think, a lot higher expectations for my performance than I delivered as I relearned the industry, or learned it for the first time. But after that, really the Army training, I think, or the military training kicked in, the leadership training, kind of having those worldly experiences. You just kind of, again, you kind of roll with the punches, and kind of an entrepreneurship spirit kicked in once I was exposed to it. And, after 22 years career with CPPI, and having the fantastic experience of being a principal, being invited to be a partner there, and working within the company, it's, again, been absolutely fabulous. But at the same time, I'm on the precipice of a whole new change, and working with my wife, and doing some things on my own with consulting, but, taking the family farm, and how do we not take the easy route and develop it and kind of make some easy money, but how do we give back to others in the community, for the reasons we love the farm, the natural setting, the benefits it gives back to us, and how do we set up programs and working as partners going forward, kind of in the second half of our career, and kind of jumping off the cliff per se, and from a very stable company corporate life to true entrepreneurship, and starting a business. So that's my background, and I kind of listen to that myself and go, man, there's some turning points in that, and there's other turning points that are personal, but I mean, just in a career sense, it's like, wow, I kind of survived some stuff. I'm looking forward to the next 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that really jumped out to me, and I had to write it down, is you said facing adversity without knowing it, and then you listed off 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 things where that was the case. And people talk about, in the research that I've done about grit, people talk about basically force yourself to do hard things, right? Or fun discomfort, or toughening, all these terms basically to build, that resilience that you're talking about, that you learned through these life events, that a lot of people don't have anymore. And as one guy termed, I can't remember the author of the book right now, but the comfort crisis, and people aren't making those life altering decisions, like moving across the country or to a different country because, oh, I have a job, or, oh, I have friends, and as if everyone doesn't have those things. So that really struck me when you said that. So
I think it kind of creates a belief in yourself that you don't realize you have, and kind of being through those hard scenarios, or again, just kind of growing up with it, and growing up with change. Personality wise, it doesn't really affect me, but I think also experientially, I've faced it throughout my life with all the different moves and schools, and everything else, that you just kind of go, yeah, let's bring it on. It's not that scary.
Right.
But if you haven't experienced a lot of it, it can seem very, very scary. And again, you don't want to be flippant about it. I mean, you want to go in it with a plan and understand what you're getting into, but at the same time, yeah, it you know, it can be a very good thing.
Right. Right. So weigh the options, heavily consider, but at the end of the day, have the valor and
Have the belief in
yeah,
yourself.
and
Look
believe
in the
in
mirror
yourself.
and kind of say, yeah, this is something I can do, and you're going to need support along the way, and there's a lot of people out there that want to help you, and you'd be surprised where that help comes from.
Right.
And I think, knowing that, again, you can succeed, but don't necessarily think it's all on your shoulders to succeed, to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Being willing to lean on people along the way. Maybe that's another thing I learned, through all the moves and the changes, but, leaning the collaboration side of, again, collaboration is such a big word for the past few years, and breaking down silos, and, absolutely, and we wouldn't be sitting here without it. If we hadn't had the courage to open up and be vulnerable as we had discussions, we probably wouldn't be having this one.
Right.
And then you don't know where that help can come from. So, I think as much about knowing you can handle it, it's also being willing to be vulnerable with people to learn and grow from their experiences. I mean,
Yeah. Well, and
part of grit's also being vulnerable, right? That's courage in itself.
Right. To check your ego, right? Because blind spots are that by definition, you can't see them. So you need someone else's perspective in order to gain that perspective. You have to trust that, and you have to find, that right person to put that trust into. So
absolutely.
Cautious confidence, because there's people out there that will lead you astray as well. But if you don't try, you'll never know. So
right. And you kind of mentioned it with the confidence there, but it's checking the ego, right? It's not necessarily having an ego, but having confidence, and it's definitely two different things.
Right.
And I think grit and having experienced things gives you confidence, but if you stay humble and don't let your ego get in the way, and listen and involve others, you'll go so much further.
Right. Definitely. Gotcha. So one thing I wanted to touch on there, you talked about a little bit your transition from big corporate executive, in a large company corporate machine setting, and moving that over to entrepreneurialism. And I think that's a move that a lot of people probably consider, but again, a scary thought, of leaving the comfort and the safety and the benefits and the 9 to 5, and someone else carrying all the risk. So, or in your case, 6 to 7 or whatever, not 9 to 5, but you know what I'm saying. So what's your experience with that, and what advice would you give to that person who's maybe riding the fence and teeter-tottering on that decision?
Yeah, and these are very individual decisions, and for me, I like to term it as a layer cake. I mean, there's a lot of layers in the decision to go on my own, and in particular work with Anita and kind of start the farm business, and then have the consulting. And what I can say is being able to work with her and the family is the icing on top of the cake. And so it probably wasn't until that icing was there that it made sense. And so part of that for us is our kids are in high school, and so she's gotten to the point now of not just being a full-time mom, but being able to expand her horizon and say, what is her kind of next chapter. And, she, and the kids have supported me through my career. And, I had gotten to the point where we had some money in the bank, something we could do together. We had the farm and the land already here to do it. She's getting certified in, nature therapy, and it was just kind of the stars aligned to say, let's do it. If this had presented itself 5 years ago, we might not be doing it. And, again, there's always a saying that, there's never there's never the best time, but for us, this is the best time, right? And sometimes you got to jump in. Again, that's where it gets very personal, but sometimes you got to jump in and make it happen. And at the same time, if we didn't kind of have those stars align, we probably wouldn't be jumping. But it is, we just look at it and say, yeah, let's do it together. I mean, here's a chance for us to work together after all these years, outside of working together as parents, but now to be able to work together professionally. Right. How can we not pass that up? So as your life partner there, and to then be able to, venture together, in kind of the second half of your life as your kids then grow up and do their thing, it just made complete sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the two best times to make a decision, right, are a long time ago and right now. There's nothing in between. So.
Right. Yeah. It's not to say I didn't have considerations in my 22 years. I mean, there were points along the way where there were offers from other companies. There were opportunities to kind of go at it myself, or there were thoughts to go at it myself. There were opportunities with family, and it just didn't seem right. It just didn't seem to work out based on a lot of different factors. But right now, we kind of took a look at it and said the advantages are here, and we were both ready to do it. And I think the big part was that we were both ready to do it. And so it wasn't something that I was going to do that was going to burden the family. It was something that Anita wanted to do and we could do together. And it was our next chapter. And it kind of resolved the fear of leaving the comfort of, the corporate life and kind of having that paycheck, because, putting our heads together and saying, we're going to do this together, and we're going to take this risk together, made it an easier decision for me. Mm-hmm. And for her. I mean, she was doing it either way, but kind of what we're doing now is a little bit bigger than what any individual could do. So again, the sum of our parts are bigger than the individual, for sure.
Right. Sure. Yeah, definitely. So you touched on there for a second, other opportunities along the way. And I've got this saying that I like to share with people that the grass is not greener on the other side. The grass is greener where you water it. And I firmly believe that. And back when we worked together, I think that I had some other offers and things along the way too. And that was always the way that I felt. But I don't know that that's the way everybody feels. There's definitely, especially in the industry that we came from, a lot of jumping around and another dollar here, another benefit there. But so looking back on it now, I mean, is that still your sentiment? The grass is greener where you watered it, for sure?
I think so. I mean, I even though I had other opportunities, I stayed dedicated and committed, to my position. And, again, the chance that I had to be a partner within that company is because I think worked very hard at, my craft and stayed committed to that company. And if I hadn't done that and always kind of had my head someplace else, I don't think I would have had that opportunity to be a partner. So, I do believe in, the resolve of giving everything you got into what you're doing. And, I get asked, kind of do some stuff with the Rinker School of Construction Management, and get asked kind of what's the advice you'd give to recent graduates. And it's, I tell them, listen, whatever you're given to do it to the best of your ability, because people will see that and find, where you can be more valuable. But if you're always trying to get to the next position, people aren't going to see the true value even where you're at, so focus in, learn everything you can within the position you're in, stay committed. And that's not to say don't speak up for yourself when you need to, but at the same time, focus in on what you're doing and doing it to the best of your ability. And again, good things are going to happen. That I think was kind of my, kind of my mantra going through, and just, given an opportunity, I wouldn't say no. I'd kick the door open. What can we make of it? Let's give it a shot. Another challenge. Let's do it. I didn't see it as a chance to fail, but a chance to succeed. I remember I got my first platoon and I was in Korea, and they're like, "Oh man, Webster, sorry man, you're getting the worst platoon, in the battalion." The previous platoon leader was 8 up, and anyway, I'm kind of walking in going, "Man, the only place I can take it is up. Give me the worst." no problem, man. I didn't see that as a downside. I saw that as only a chance to take it to a new level. And
the bar is easier to raise, right?
Yeah. Where others have been, no, I want to walk into the best case scenario, man. If you can take the worst case scenario and make it the best, that's, but again, having that confidence that, hey, let's do it,
Right.
Why not? And not being afraid to fail, but realizing you can succeed. And I think part of this transition now is, working with Anita, and again, we've had conversations on what could go wrong, but I think ultimately it's like, man, these are the areas we can succeed. This is where we can really do well for ourselves, for our family, and personally and for others, and give back. So.
Right. So yeah, so your prior life as a corporate executive and principal of a large company obviously took a lot of dedication and grit over those years. But if you boil it down, what's the force that drives you there? What's your passion really about there? What kept you going that time?
Yeah, I think it kind of gets back to teams. So if I say kind of one thing, I enjoy working within teams, and I enjoy seeing the team succeed or other individuals succeed. And so how can I continue to help others succeed, and get better? And so more so than building stuff or making a dollar, it was, how can, the others that I'm working with, again, how can we all get better? Because I'm, you're learning, I'm learning from everyone around me too. So when you kind of take that military experience and the military structure translates very easily and fluidly into construction, kind of the structure, the organizational chart, and kind of how things lay out. It was, that part was a very easy transition. And so taking that kind of esprit de corps from the military into the office / construction project where, your NCOs, you're are out there, they're the superintendents and foremen, and your workers are your soldiers, and you got the managers are your officers, or the planners, making sure that the field folks have everything they need to be successful. Very similar to the military. And so, kind of what I learned from being a military brat and grow, and then being in it was, again, how do you make the unit successful, not yourself? And that's where I got the most joy, was seeing, again, the units succeed, the projects succeed, the subcontractors succeed, and ultimately that then made, the company successful, because if they're all succeeding, then the project's going to go well. But that's probably the biggest driver for me, was getting in there and solving problems and removing roadblocks and seeing the team be successful.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Why was that? Kind of what motivated me there? I don't know. Maybe it's personal into what I, again, kind of enjoyed, what, again, kind of what revved the engine. And that was it, doing pay apps and reviewing cost reports and see how much money we made at the end wasn't it. I knew if we did it right, we were going to make money.
Right.
But it wasn't the money side of it at all. It was more about, again, that team and staying committed to the team. And, if you have to say anything, is not letting people down. If I woke up in the morning and knew that I hadn't accomplished something, that I'd let someone down, that was bad. I wanted to make that right. So, maybe the motivator was more about not letting people down, and the proactive side of that was getting people, to the point of success. Setting them up to be the most successful was the proactive side of not letting people down. So I hate to let people down. So how do you be proactive and get them successful to begin with?
Gotcha. So I guess the new team to be successful is primarily you and the wife, right? So if you let her down, then you're sleeping on the couch. That's pretty immediate feedback.
Who's to say I don't sleep there now? So the proactive side is getting back into the bed now. No, absolutely. And I think, part of the switch for me is, I feel like I've kind of let her down because she has done what she's loved to do, and that's to be with the kids. At the same time, she was very career oriented before we had kids. So, there's a point where the corporate world allowed us as a family to have that setup to where she could be, the primary caregiver. She could be at home. She could take care of the kids, make sure, they had the things they needed. And I was able to pursue a career and, provide a, salary that allowed all of us to really be doing what we love to do. And here's a chance now for her and I to work together to do what we love to do, and so part of this next venture is, consulting and working with businesses or groups and trying to, further and advance them. And so it's a win-win scenario for us. And same thing with Anita and kind of the nature therapy and how can she work with individuals or groups and, get that anxiety that, so much of us, that we all face, how can we bring that down? So it's a very common goal for both of us. And that's what's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. So going from the corporate world and all that structure and hierarchy, like you were saying, and now you're a double entrepreneur with more or less, literally hundreds of acres of a blank slate and the consulting business blank slate. So how do you approach your day? Well, actually, how did you approach your day before, as far as prioritizing all the things that an executive has to think about, and then how does that translate to the blank slate now?
Yeah, no, it's been a little bit scary. I mean, essentially, my schedule was kind of just consumed before, in that executive position. Okay, I got these set meetings, and then I need to have this one here, need to have that one, and before you know it, you're double booked, and you're trying to prioritize where you need to be, and you didn't have much of a chance to even kind of set a schedule per se. It was one of those, classic time management tricks of blocking out time to do work, right? It's like, okay, I've got to get that report done. All right, I better put it on my calendar and schedule work, because if not, someone's going to schedule a meeting. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of had those tricks. But I mean, I would look at my calendar, and there wasn't blank spots on it, to now it's kind of like it's all blank, yeah, I've got a couple meetings coming up to your point of that transition. So I've actually had to learn some new tools. And I was talking to a friend of mine, John Boussart, earlier today, and as he's starting his cabinet business, but one of the things I picked up on was bullet journaling. And I want to give credit. I'd have to look up again the author of it, but I want to give credit where credit's due on that. But yeah, I did some research into it. And so to help me stay focused, with kind of that new freedom, I've gone to bullet journaling. And it's really helped me then see it, prioritize it, and get it accomplished. And I kind of told John that today. He's like, man, he called me up, and it's the kind of part of the consulting is working with John as he gets his business going. And he's like, man, I'm just overwhelmed. I'm not even treading water anymore. I'm drowning, and I said, man, try bullet journaling, try getting thought. He's like, yeah, it's just swimming in my head. I'm like, exactly. You got to get it out of your head. You got to get it down. You got to find those tools and tips and tricks that allow you to prioritize, get it done, move forward, and keep progress and keep that efficiency. We went out and visited a shop, and it's like, hey, man, get some whiteboards up, get visual. Again, getting things out of your head to where you can see them and then focus in on the tasks at hand. And I think it's key. However that is, bullet journaling, whiteboards, sticky notes, using sticky notes effectively to where you can rearrange them, moving them around, taking your day and doing kind of that production planning schedule for your day. It doesn't have to be construction. You can do a production planning just for your week and what you need to do every day. And so there's a lot of tools to do that. So yeah, it's finding new tools or rediscovering old ones.
Right. So basically never stop learning, right? I mean,
absolutely.
It's constant. Absolutely. It's constant practice, and it's purposeful practice. Yes. Intentional.
Absolutely. And it's Michael Easter is the author of Comfort Crisis. I looked it up when you said that. It's not like I knew that off the top of my head, but I'm finishing that up now thanks to your recommendation.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, here kind of his point is, always learning. He's again, you're doing things to stress yourself out to understand your limits. Every year you're doing something, every year you're going to take an event and do something that pushes you further than you thought you could go.
Right.
So you're always in that learning cycle. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, it's good stuff there. So yeah, I mean, we've touched on everything that you're into a little bit. So as far as what's next for you? I mean, what's the next goal or big rollout, and where's it going, and what's the end game?
Yeah, so probably the next big goal for me is get my office set up. But yeah, I still have to set up the home office. Yeah, part of it's getting the whiteboards up in my home office so I can start getting those goals down. But
Right.
The big one is working. We actually, Anita and I were talking this week, and we were trying to get Bunny Bell up, and that's the home kind of venue / nature therapy business, and really kind of get the venue going, in February, March here. But we looked at it and said, man, there's a lot we need to do to make that happen. And so we're talking, said, let's push that to October, and that seems like a big push, but hey, we want to set it up right. And that was it's one of those things that, again, I can't see that as failure, because the goal was to kind of get that going in spring of this year. But what it is setting it up for success, and making sure that we do it right, because we know once we hit that venue market, if it's not right and bad reviews come in, then we're tanked. So it's kind of having that understanding. But part of it is getting through that transition with the current barn we have to get it into the venue, get some revenue goals, start setting up KPIs. But I think when you look down the road even more, what I would like to see for the farm, when you kind of talk about that and kind of Bunny Bell in general, in 5 years, I would like to get it to the point where we're the figureheads of a company out here. So we've got to scale and grow it to a point where we can have employees and get it to where we are the figureheads and more the CEOs of the business and not the doers of it. Because what we want to do is have a sustainable business on the farm here that isn't reliant on us, that it can continue to prosper without us. And I think
going back to that successful team.
Absolutely. Right. And level 5 leadership, when you talk about, the levels of leadership, and, level 5 is that the business is successful without you. Level 4 is, yeah, you've delegated, you've got everything kind of in place, but you haven't gotten to the point where you can walk away. You haven't trained the next set of leaders,
right.
And so, I think the key is training the next set of leaders, entrepreneurs. And here we are, the University of Florida, Gainesville, and they've got hospitality as a major at the university. Where can we tap in and have an intern flow? And it's a win-win scenario, and find that kind of right next person as we continue to grow, and, kind of having that plan in the head that in 5 years, that's where we want to be. And so we're working on that plan now, to get there with a second venue space, with glamping and doing kind of tree houses and doing offsite retreats for businesses along with weddings, and what's going to happen to the farmhouse that, when Anita's parents move out, eventually in the next 5 to 10 years, what do we do with that? Does someone move in, or does that become part of the venue space? And having those discussions and putting that master plan in place and continuing to work on that kind of on the business, taking that 10 to 20% a week or month, and work on the business as we're also working in the business, getting the current venue ready, so yeah, and I'll say this, 10 years ago, I probably didn't have the experience or the maturity to be looking at it that way as the way I'm looking at it now, and so back to kind of constantly learning and having that ability to kind of look at things and say, okay, this is business-wise, business strategy, evolving from a construction manager to, being a business owner, to then owning your own business and an entrepreneur. To be, it's not like I just, one thing we talk about grit, it's kind of been that methodical process, and which has been great. I applaud those who get out of school and start businesses when they're 21, and just say, hey, I'm going to go after it, or they're 18 and they get out there and do that. I think they've got more courage and or ignorance, and sometimes that's even better,
hand in hand. Yeah.
Sometimes knowledge can hold you back, because again, you know too much and you get scared with it. And
right.
I think that was part of it, was kind of letting go of some of those fears and knowing that we can be successful too. So anyway, again, it's funny how it kind of weighs out.
Yeah. So is it life experience over those 10 years that got you there, or was it the actual business ownership portion, you think, that forced you there?
I would say definitely both. And because life experience, there's a lot of things that being part of the company that I was part of that believed in the community. So you got in the community and you volunteered, and is able to lead different organizations within the community. That I kind of classify as life experience. Life experience in the sense of moving around, life and experience of, again, the personal things that we've had to battle through as a family and as individuals. But at the same time, that work experience layers on top of it, and it gives you the confidence, or gave us the confidence, to move forward with things, to understand books and taxes and employment. And, it's none of those were necessarily unknowns. It's still a lot and can be overwhelming, but back to kind of chopping wood and getting the plan together to accomplish it. And so I think if you can combine the two and not look at life's experiences as hardships, but back to chances to learn and grow and develop yourself and your relationship, that can go hand in hand with the same development you have in your career. Yeah.
So grit, part of the definition of grit, at least in psychology, is perseverance over time. It's not just courage, like you said, can go hand in hand with ignorance, but it's how do you handle the long haul too, and what's your level of commitment, and how long can you stay dedicated to that commitment that you've made. That's part of grit as well. So there's a time and a place to move and shift, but there's also a time and a place to double down and grind and chop wood, like you said. So and it's individual for everybody.
Yeah, and I think if you're continuing to see the good in what you're doing, if you're continuing to enjoy what you're doing, the grind isn't as big of a grind. When you stop enjoying it, when it stops fulfilling you, and maybe fulfillment's a better word, because sometimes you don't always enjoy it, but is it fulfilling you in one aspect of your life? Is it fulfilling the priorities of your life? Is it getting you then to the end goal, whatever that is for you, then it's worth the chop, right? When I was kind of the 4 years in the military, and that kind of stopped fulfilling where I wanted to go, and for me it was, hey, family's going to be the most important thing for me. And so if I'm going to stay in the military, I'm going to put a strain on this relationship and on my partner, my wife, that's not fair to her or to the relationship. And it was like, okay, it's time to move on. It's not fulfilling my end goal, which, was to have a healthy, sustainable relationship throughout my lifetime. And so I think probably similarly to where I'm at now, and making this shift, the shift to work with, and some people would kind of disagree with me and say, working with family, you're crazy. But I'm confident in the relationship, in our relationship, and not just with my wife, but my in-laws, to make this shift and have that even higher level of fulfillment now. So where the corporate job fulfilled everything that we wanted to do during that period, gave us stability, again, allowed us to kind of have the roles we had during that time. What we can do now even creates a bigger fulfillment of that. So.
Gotcha. I think it was Bedros Koulian, and I can't remember the name of his company right now, but anyway, he defines fulfillment somewhere I read as faith, family, fitness, finance, and fun. So being the five kind of key elements there. So that, I think you pretty much just hit on all five and how it changed. So yeah. Good. Okay, good. Well, so I mean, we've covered a lot. I really appreciate it. I got a couple more questions for you before we close this out. I feel like to a degree, I'm getting revenge on the hard questions that you asked me when you interviewed me all those years ago.
You still remember those?
Oh yeah. Well, I remember being beat red and my heart racing, but that's about it. So I got a couple for you now.
All right.
So prepare yourself. So the first one is, what does grit mean to you?
Yeah, I think, when I think of grit, it's that determination. It's being uncommon. So I'm gonna steal that from Oh, you know who I'm stealing it from. Oh, dang it. Hashtag uncommon. Why can't I why can't I think of his name right? I lost it. Anyway, we'll come back and edit that in. But I think it's having that uncommon determination to see something through. I hate to say it, it's something I worry about with my kids even, and I think too easily we remove hardship because it's hard. And as a parent, you're like, oh, I don't want them to suffer. And it's like, well, wait a minute, suffering and failing creates character. And so, yeah, sometimes you got to skin your knee. Sometimes, you've got to lose your wallet and not have someone give you the cash that was in it, and you're out that money. Sometimes you've got to fail a class, and because you didn't study and someone didn't remind you, and put the book in front of you, and learn that those things are because you were resilient, because you motivated yourself, and you were able to get that done. That then builds that confidence. So grit, is about that constant strive for success, and not letting things get in the way. And again, overcoming them, whatever it is. Put a door in the wall, go over the wall, go around the wall, dig a tunnel underneath it, but don't let the wall stop you.
Yeah, that's perfect. The most recent book I just finished is called Grit: The Power of Passion and Perseverance. Is by Angela Duckworth, and she's a psychologist. And you touched on one of the examples that she gives, the difference between people who succeed. Big success like Olympians and NFL quarterbacks, and just really, the people you think of when you think of grit, and the difference, or like the Navy people that graduate from BUDS, from Navy SEAL training, and you hear the Navy SEAL guys talk about it too. These guys that come in with all the talent in the world, that still fail because they can't translate that talent to perseverance. And so the power of passion and perseverance being greater than raw talent.
Yeah, it's one of those that I have a ton of respect for Tom Brady. You kind of talk about the NFL quarterback, and and his being 40 something, still playing what he does every day to kind of stay fit, to keep playing. But I love to use examples like that of leadership. So he comes from the Bucks that weren't even close to being a Super Bowl contender to winning the Super Bowl. It was based on really his leadership, and his passion, his grit to see that team through, the will to win, the we're going to overcome the adversity to get there. And you're still going to get knocked down at times, literally, figuratively,
right.
But get back up and keep after it, year after year, day after day. Again, is he the most talented, physically talented quarterback? No. Is he the smartest quarterback out there? He might be, but I believe he's the most passionate quarterback out there, and has that grit to just keep going.
Yeah, as Jocko would say, there's no bad teams, only bad leaders, right?
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
Man, what a perfect example with the Bucks, with him going from there to the Bucks. Yeah. Okay. Appreciate that. That makes sense. So my closing question for you now is, if you had to look back, and dig deep in your experience, what would be your grittiest moment, or example that you could share with the audience?
Yeah, and it's
and how did you ultimately persevere?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was the death of our first child, Odessa. She died at 13 months old. And you look back on that, and in today's world, it's kind of shocking. People, what I found interesting is we ended up consoling more people as they tried to console us. Because they were just like, oh, I'm so sorry this happened. I can't believe it. And you're like, it's okay. It's okay. And you're, they don't realize that they're getting consoled, and that was almost, as a parent going through that, anyway, you walk away from those moments going, oh my gosh. But I think, one is kind of having the will to live after that. And then two is kind of finding purpose again. And then, and trying to find that purpose in face of adversity. You had mentioned, the comfort crisis. One of the things he has in there is, our, modern day society's adversity to death. That we don't want to. We want to live forever. We don't want to admit that we're going to die one day. That if said, hey, you're going to die in a year, what would you do different? You would change what you're doing, but why don't you do that now? Why don't you change what you're doing now? Because you're going to die, and I think it's one of those things that you go through that and you realize that it wasn't that many years ago, the reason you would have 10 kids is because only 5 would survive, and so death was a lot bigger part of everyone's life, especially children and birth. And in that time period before modern medicine, there was a lot of death. And so I think, part of it was realizing that what we're facing, was pretty common just a couple hundred years ago, and that every one of those people got through it, and you've got to find kind of the new normal, and you've got to find your new purpose. And my purpose kind of immediately was for my wife and being there for her. And being, something that I had to, for me, it was, I needed her to know that I needed her to live for me to survive, because she had lost all purpose. Somehow it's kind of the Immaculate Conception. We, a few months later after Odessa's death, we found out we were pregnant again. And I truly believe if it wasn't for that, would Anita be here now? That's a big question mark. But when she had found out she was pregnant, now there was purpose, again, and there was a point where she didn't want that purpose, but she had it. So she had to keep going for that next baby. And over time, you learn to put up the walls and kind of go through your day, without it affecting you, but the pain's always there, the scar's there, the wound will reopen, at times, and that's fine. We acknowledge, we've chosen to live with Odessa, and when I say that, our kids, even though they never knew her, we see something funny happen, and it's like, oh, O's here messing with us, and so we keep her alive in our lives and what we do every day. And that was 18 years ago, that she died. But, to kind of claw yourself out of that fog, get through the stages of grieving, and you've got to then find what that new purpose is. And I think for us, it's the reinforcement of how important family was. It was the purpose and remained the purpose, for kind of what we do, and focusing in, on, it's tomorrow could be the last day. So how do you want to live your life today? And you kind of, that doesn't mean you go out and be reckless and go bungee jumping and doing bucket list items left and right, but you live your life in a way that, I think it made me realize I live my life in a way that it's not what I do, but, how you treat people, how you do things, and try to live that way a lot more than the box I checked or whatever material thing there is, or whatever, it's I would back to team, I guess, back to what kind of drives me. It's, that is way more important than anything else in my life, and being there for the family, and kind of, again, fulfillment. This fulfills that primary family role better than what it did before my previous career. So making this career switch is going to fulfill that purpose even better.
Right.
And so you find that purpose and you drive forward with it. People talk about work-life balance, and it's not a time thing. It's, finding what you love to do that you can do it your whole life. That's work-life balance. And when that balance got out of whack for me, it was, how do you bring it back in balance? And this is how, making this career switch.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, that's inspirational, and I know it's tough, but I really appreciate you sharing that. So I'm sure, even if one person listens to this, if that one person is inspired or moved or gains some type of, insight that they can implement in their own life, then it will be worth it for sure.
And I've gained those insights from others. So, it's, pay it forward or pay it when it's due, but absolutely.
Yeah.
I think all those others that have persevered that I've learned from.
Definitely. Yeah. And I'm learning from you, and I'm hoping that every interview we do here, I know that they will be just as beneficial to us as they are to anyone who listens. And I'm really looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Carson.
Thank you. All right. Talk soon.
Thank you for listening to the Grit Growth Podcast with host Carson Stefanelli and Matt Webster. We sincerely hope you were inspired by the interview and found at least one useful tool or tactic to implement in your own life. Now, level up by taking immediate action. Apply one lesson learned to your life as soon as possible to make sure it sticks. Post it and tag us to increase accountability. You can join the Grit Growth movement to restore American grit to its former glory by building an unprecedented force of conquerors, both in business and in life, at www.gritgrowth.org and wherever you're active on the socials. Please also drop a rating and review on your podcast app, as it goes a long way in helping the movement gain traction. Now, don't let this inspiration go to waste. Commit to conquer. Lead your life. Leave a legacy. Gather your grit and go get after it.